Good evening, everyone. I just want to test Klaus's. Can you just test? Are they working, Klaus? Okay. That's good. Good evening, everyone. The time is 7:02 p.m. on Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. I'd like to call this Active Transportation and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee meeting to order. The town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territories of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here today continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaty of 1923. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and now our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together in a brighter future. Could I please get a motion to put the agenda, to approve the agenda as circulated by Legislative Services? Owen, Gino, any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, could I please get a motion to adopt the minutes of December 12th, 2023, please? For those that were here, Steve and Gino. Any comments or questions? Klaus? Just push your button. Just push it once. Can't really see it. I want to figure out which one is yours. Is the light on? Okay, 1 second.
Now it's green.
It's green now, yeah. Okay. I don't think the minutes reflect what we were talking about. There's nothing specific of any nature in these minutes. I don't think they serve any purpose. We might as well not have them. There's, like we had a suggestion that you accepted. You would allow us to come to you, and you repeated it in the response to Fleck. That should have been in the minutes. So that you can look at this and you can say, okay, this is what I have to do. Why do I have to ask questions about that? Why should there be any misunderstandings about stuff like that?
Well, I'll let staff their perspective, but mine is that minutes aren't verbatim to what happened in a meeting, and these are also recorded. Most of that stuff happened in new business, not necessarily in any of the items that were on the agenda. And just remember that this committee only provides comments, not recommendations. Staff takes whatever comments we come up with, develop reports, and submits them to council. So if you're looking for a little more in-depth in mainly the new business section, because most of the discussion actually took place during that time in the meeting, if I recall correctly, we can ask staff to provide a little more detail next time on what was discussed in new business.
Yeah, I would like to see the essential elements of our comments reflected in the minutes, not just generalizing what areas we talked to, we made comments. I'd like to see what type of comments, and then naturally I like to follow up to see how they were received, what was done with them, and so on. And that I can't do. I don't have the minutes. I don't have the recording either. So it's a matter of being left in the dark about what happened in the last meeting. I don't get much out of them.
Okay, well, staff will endeavor to put more details in them to add more description on what was discussed, particularly in the new business section.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We have no delegations this evening. 7.1 memorandum from traffic and transportation analysis, transportation master plan draft report presentation. Could I get a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion? And I believe we'll have a presentation from Dave.
I'll move. Yeah, Lily moving.
Thank you. And is there a second? Owen? Dave? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I've met with you on numerous occasions, and I'm really pleased this evening to come and present a presentation on the draft active transportation master plan for the town of Aurora. My colleague Ricardo Cameno is also joining us virtually, and I will take you through a presentation today and then entertain questions after. You'll see some additions and changes in here that came from your input over the last series of meetings we've had, including in the maps. And we can talk a little bit about that after the presentation if you have questions before we wrap up. So the agenda for today's meeting is on, you see on your screen. I did introductions. The purpose of the evening presentation is to talk about the draft active transportation master plan, talk about some of the updates from the last meeting, and then I'm going to give you a bit of an overview. Some of the slides you've seen before, but not all of them. So the presentation, maybe I'll just, consists of an update to the AT&P draft report, covers the highlights today of the executive summary that we put together in the report. So the master plan includes a standalone executive summary. Well, it's embedded in the report, but it could be pulled out. So you'll see that after staff finish their review of it, and it goes to council for their information. We refined the proposed network and phasing based on the input we received at the last meeting. We added additional information on sidewalks that was raised at the committee meeting. We reviewed and made sure that we included the previously proposed grade separations throughout the system that were added onto the network. And we have some recommendations regarding that, which I'll get to later in the meeting. We completed the draft AT&P report and an executive summary. We submitted it to staff. Staff have reviewed it in detail, provided us comments. We're currently going through and refining the draft report with some of the suggestions they had and some more recent information we got from them, including from their technical team and GIS. And we are incorporating that in the plan, and we hope to have the revised draft report and its completion to staff by the end of next week. So what's in it? On the slide you see now is sort of an outline of the various chapters in the Active Transportation Master Plan report. We have an introductory section. We talk about Aurora in some detail. We talk about best practices, what others are doing. We talk about the existing network. We map it. We talk about study consultation engagement, who we spoke with, when, and the kind of input that they gave us. And there's a summary of that in the appendix. We identify a series of policies, both at the town, at the region, and provincially and federally, that relate to active transportation and capture that. We then provide details on sort of an approach for developing a network and missing links, both for trails, for sidewalks, and for cycling facilities. and we explain the rationale and approach we use to develop the network, including developing draft and candidate routes, which all of you had the opportunity to contribute to and look at, some of you more than others. And we value all that input, and I hope you will see in this final draft that the vast majority of your comments are captured in this master plan. There's a section on education and encouragement, and there's an implementation plan that identifies phasing. We've gone through a series of iterative discussions with staff, looking at the most current capital planning information, projects that are already in design, projects that are coming, so that this master plan aligns with some of those projects so we can achieve some economies of scale in terms of implementation. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so the Aurora context, consultation engagement. So for many of you, we had an open house at a farmer's market in June. We also developed a project webpage. We created an online survey, and we had an online mapping approach. We met with this committee a number of times, 4 times actually, to engage your input. We also had consultations with Aurora Cycles, who provided comment directly to us online with their thoughts and made sure that they had the opportunity to be engaged in this study, and they were. And a member of them is on the committee, which was fantastic. So what we heard, that walking and cycling barriers, there's a lack of a connected cycling trail network, concerns about high speed and noise from vehicular traffic on some roads, poor conditions on some existing sidewalks and trails, and missing links on other streets, and connections to key town destinations, and a number were identified, the GO station being the number 1 that was raised by the public, that they were looking for better connections and routes by bike and by foot to the GO station. So this master plan spent a lot of time and effort focusing on that. There was strong support for active transportation in the input we got. Stronger support than actually we initially anticipated. The residents of Aurora are really quite engaged, both recreationally using the awesome trail system you have, but we're very interested in having infrastructure that they could walk to the downtown and walk to some of the amenities, the parks, the recreation centers, and of course the GO station. And that came through in the input that we got from them. And also improving accessibility, making sure that the trail system, access to the trail system, sidewalks, the way sidewalks are designed, how they interface with developments are designed in a way that supports people with various disabilities. So, and it is consistent with the provincial standards that we have for the built environment. So how was the stakeholder input incorporated? So we used it. We went through a series of iterative reviews, looked at additional trails and multi-use paths, on-road cycling facilities. It was primarily an active transportation plan that focused a lot on cycling and multi-use pathways and road corridors, but we did additional work to bring the off-road trail system up to its current standard and to incorporate what staff here are currently proposing in terms of improvements. So it's not an update to the Trails Master Plan, but it does freshen the Trails Master Plan here. There's still a recommendation that that plan be updated in the future. Some of the desire lines that were identified, we had a lengthy discussion, if you may all recall, about routes that are currently on lands owned by or in private ownership. In the Trails Master Plan, they were clearly identified. As we went through this process, we initially removed them, but the committee thought it was really important, and staff agreed that having those lines, did indicate in the spirit of things that when those lands do come up for development, if ever, that they should pursue an opportunity to get those trail connections, and having that in the document and in a policy document that council has and is received for information was a wise approach. So those have been put back on, and we've even added a few as well. So the proposed AT network, the numbers are very surprising, or maybe not for you, but in terms of multi-use paths, just over 18 kilometers, multi-use trails, which are the off-road trails, just to be clear, the multi-use paths are, those wide, usually asphalt pathways that are in the boulevard of the roadways, while the multi-use trails are off-road. And then sidewalks, over 200 kilometers of sidewalks currently. For an AT network, that's approximately 280 kilometers today in the town of Aurora. So the existing pedestrian network is captured here, including multi-use paths and sidewalks. You've seen this map before. I'm not going to go through it again, but I wanted to share some more data with you and breaking it down for cycling and showing the cycling network. So you have a few bike lanes, just over 3 kilometers, sign routes, just over 6. You have several paved shoulders. You have a multi-use path network, both on your roads and on regional roads through the town, just over 18 kilometers. You have a great trail system, currently 61 kilometers and many more planned. And then you have a regional bike lane network that's just over 5 kilometers, for a total of 97 kilometers currently going through the municipality. This map shows the existing cycling network, both existing and proposed by facility type, with the exception of multi-use pathways on regional roads, other and existing bike lanes. What, the rest of the network on the region and what it may be in the future is unknown. We've only shown, as you'll see in the proposed network, a line type indicating that it is proposed to be a facility, but what it might be is to be determined by the region through the capital planning process. So you recall, and I didn't copy it over here, but there's a section of the report that talks about route selection criteria. We all had the opportunity to talk about them. You added some, we incorporated those in the report. We then applied that route selection criteria to develop a candidate route network. We reviewed that candidate route network with you, provided some great comments. We had some great discussions about things that were missing, that things should be added back on. And then we came up with a draft route network. We then followed this multi-step process, which is in OTM Book 18, which is the Ontario Traffic Manual Book 18, which are provincial guidelines for planning and designing cycling infrastructure that are provided to municipalities as a guidance to provide consistency across the province of Ontario. So it was a multi-step process where we looked at facility type options. We went out in the field, we did investigations, we measured roadways and boulevards, and looked at different options. Just because it couldn't fit today doesn't mean it shouldn't be there in the future. So we thought about, well, what would have to change along that corridor in the future to permit the kind of facility type we're thinking is appropriate. We then went through a process of documenting the rationale and developed the facility type network. And so the facility types, as you see on the screen, include sidewalks and bike lanes, signed bike routes, which means the cyclists are on the road. You see that green bike route sign there. Paved shoulders, multi-use paths that are in the boulevard of the roadway, separated bike lanes, and they come in a variety of different types. Some are buffered with no flex bollards, some have flex bollards, some are physically separated with precast curbs, and then multi-use trails, your extensive off-road multi-use trail system. The next map shows the existing and proposed multi-use path and off-road trail system. We broke this out a little separately just to keep things simple so that we have a sidewalk map, we have a multi-use pathway and trail map, and then we have the cycling on-road network map to provide better clarity to all of you. And that was suggested by staff, and it was a good suggestion. So this map captures the various network. The solid green is what's existing, and the dash green is what's proposed. This map is an update to what was in the Transportation Master Plan. It's your sidewalk gap map. So as part of this study, we did review the sidewalk gap analysis, which was quite extensive. That was done as part of the Master Transportation Study. There are a few minor missing links, but staff had already identified those. And working with staff, they updated the digital database, which is what you currently see on the screen, up to January of 2024, this month, to show everything that's existing and everything that is proposed, which you'll see in a future map. There's a number of sidewalk gaps. Sometimes there will be new sidewalk gaps that you'll have to consider as development occurs in the future. So there are policy recommendations in this report that suggest that development comes online. You should give consideration to this master plan and some of the guidance that is in there about connectivity to new developments. It's an important consideration that I think many municipalities are failing to sort of implement, but some are. And you don't want to lose the opportunity to get that connection at the time that development comes online. The proposed cycling network, again, you provided lots of input. We went through a series of edits on this. Everything that's proposed is dashed. Everything that's solid is existing. We went through a number of iterations on facility types. There are some facility types that the town may implement an interim solution and consider something, different in the ultimate, depending on when they rehab or resurface a road. So we also thought about implementation. We wanted to make sure that, there's an opportunity to implement both the sidewalk, the trail, and the cycling infrastructure as quickly as possible. Is that my time up? Thank you. It's a network that, in our opinion, responds to the input we got. It responds to the OTM Book 18 methodology for a community of your size, and it's achievable. It will take time. This is a plan that, is more than 20 years. It's broken down into 2 phases, but I think it's important that, the plan is comprehensive, and the decision on implementing by phase and how much you implement on an annual basis will be, go through a process where staff will make recommendations, council will consider them, weigh that with, the budget decision-making and other capital plans, and move forward on an annual basis. And that's a normal process, and that's a good process. We're encouraging staff to keep council updated on an annual basis so they understand what's been implemented and what has not, and what's proposed for the subsequent year, just to keep the process going. So on this map, you'll see sort of the proposed network, from what you have currently of 298 kilometers total up to just under 500. So it's a significant expansion over the long term. Adding bike lanes, conventional bike lanes, which are primarily narrowing road lanes a little bit, tightening them up so that they're in line with TAC standards, Transportation Association of Canada, and adding pavement marking, sign routes. We've added some sign routes, paved shoulders. There's a few opportunities to improve that. Multi-use paths, where we're adding a number of multi-use paths, so we're proposing it. Separated bike lanes of very different types. Multi-use trails, a substantial expansion as per the plans that the town already has for expanding the off-road trail system. The desire lines we talked about, which are not insignificant. We've got a lot of land that in the future could be redeveloped, and was assessed with part of the Trails Master Plan and reviewed as part of the work we did. So that's just under 25 kilometers. And then the sidewalks, which is a substantial increase too, of another 33 kilometers to eliminate the sidewalk gaps that were identified in the Transportation Master Plan study. And as well, finally, the regional bike lanes, which are significant in terms of recommendations for their roads as they flow through the town of Aurora. So the implementation plan, I mentioned the 2 phases, short-term and long-term. We first identified some low investment quick wins. There are a few roads where you might consider some road diets or narrowing travel lanes that you already have. It doesn't mean you're necessarily losing travel lanes. It may be that you're tightening them up because you can. Some of your roads are a little wider than they need to be. And if you're trying to also traffic calm the road, there's some benefit from thinking about introducing on-road bike facilities as well. Completing gaps in the trails, non-road networks to support network connectivity. Sidewalks, we've identified, we took the medium and high priority missing gaps that came out of the public process for the Transportation Master Plan study. We reviewed those again and confirmed most of them. Some of the medium we moved into the longer term just to sort of balance it out because it's a significant investment over time. And the reality is because the cost and what was involved, our thinking was that it needed to be spread out a little bit better over the 20 years. So some of the low priority and some of the medium priority was shifted to the second term, 11 to 20. But it's still a very ambitious program for sidewalks. And the strategy for implementation is to take advantage of opportunities when the region or the town are improving roadways or doing infrastructure improvements, utility improvements, to have staff review this plan to see if that route is on the plan and a project has been advanced, regardless of whether it's in the first short phase or long-term phase, it should be moved up and incorporated in that project so that you can get economies of scale and it'll be less costly to implement. And by an example, if you're resurfacing a road and you're replacing the pavement markings, why not move the pavement markings, the new pavement markings, to where you want them to put in the bike lanes instead of having to go in and remove them and you know, it doesn't look very nice. So the best time to do it is when you resurface the road, because you're going to be putting new pavement markings down anyways. So that's just one little example of a process to follow. In terms of multi-use trails and phasing, this is the network that shows the phasing. Short term is the blue dashed. Long term is the orangey red dashed line. This was reviewed by the trail team here at the town in a number of iterative reviews. And it's as current as I think it can be with the information they've given us. So this information in terms of phasing is based on their plans and also thinking about some of the projects that we identified that provide connectivity for the overall AT network that we wanted to focus on a little bit. The next map is the proposed cycling network phasing map. Again, short term, same color scheme. Short term is dashed blue. Long term is the dashed orange color, phased over the two time periods, 10 years and then 10 and beyond. So it could be, you know, right now we're saying it's 0 to 10 and 11 to 20 plus. But the 20 plus, you know, it could be 30 years, it could be 40 years. I think it's important that every 5 or so years, the municipality, as they review their official plan, they review their transportation plan. They should also review their trails plan and their active transportation plan, so that it's a good time to be thinking about all those things all at the same time, especially to do that in advance of you know, updating their DC bylaws if they're seeing a lot of development. It's just an opportune time to revisit what they have, reinforce the rationale, and you know, with the master plans you now have, you know, they don't have to be full comprehensive updates. If you do them every 5 years, they can be, you know, cost a lot less and still be very effective in doing these updates, is what municipalities are calling them. So the next slide identifies some priority projects I just wanted to bring to your attention. So there are lots of priority projects in the first 10 years, but these are a few that we highlighted that we were encouraging staff and council to think about advancing based on the input we got and the input we got from this committee. One is the Earl Stewart bike lanes, just over 1 kilometer, the Edward Street bike lanes, 1.8 kilometers, and the Murray Drive bike lanes, 1.68, which provides great connectivity, of course, to the high school and that whole community. In terms of off-road trails, the Addison Hall Trail and the Shining Hill Development Trails, all that are in the process of design, I believe, and are priorities for the town as well. And then sidewalks and multi-use paths, the Young Street multi-use path corridor, which is from Bloomington up Young to just beyond the rail grade separation. Looking at sidewalks along that corridor and a multi-use path as well for cycling, so that cyclists don't have to be on that road with motor vehicle traffic. And then the Edward Street sidewalk, a 0.5 kilometer section from Dunning to, I believe, Young. Yeah. So the next table, which you haven't seen before, sort of brings it all together. It's sort of a one-shot look at the phasing by short-term and long-term for the entire network. The first section being the on-road component. Sidewalks then, so you can see for sidewalks, for example, we've got just around 9 kilometers proposed of sidewalks in the first 10 years and 24 proposed in the longer term. And like I said before, there are opportunities, and depending on council and staff's, you know, approach, they may move or advance some of the sidewalk implementation that's currently in long term into short term. But this is consistent with the transportation master plan, and it's consistent with our approach too. We think the key gaps have been captured in the short term phase, and the focus should be implementing those. And they're not inexpensive. You know, they can be $450,000 per kilometer to put in sidewalks, depending on what you have to do, more if there is civil work that has to be done. So it's, you know, it's a consideration that has to be made when you're doing these types of master plans. Multi-use trails and desire lines. We didn't cost desire lines because we really don't know what will be involved in the trail, where it will be, how many crossings of water courses or, ditches there might be, whether there's grade issues or the need for retaining walls. So our suggestion is that, in the future, when the lands that have desire lines identified on them, if ever come into the redevelopment process here, that at that time, consideration should be given following the process set out in this plan to identify what the appropriate alignment should be in the facility type. In most cases, it will be an off-road multi-use trail. And that includes crossings of key roadways. And then York Region, as you say, you see we've identified the distance, but not the timing, because that's really up to the region, and the town doesn't have a lot of control, but they can influence it. And it was good that York Region did come to the previous meeting, or the meeting before that, to provide some commentary and to, participate in the development of this master plan. So we were very appreciative of that. Can you advance the slide? The clicker is no longer moving. That's probably another warning that I'm running out of time. So the next few slides are the recommendations. And I don't think I'm going to read every one, if that's okay. I'm going to read some of the key ones. You all have them. It was part of the handout package, and they'll all be in the draft master plan. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, the obvious one that we're recommending is that the town adopt the master plan and the approach and consider reviewing it in 5-year increments, or as council so decides, to work to encourage active transportation friendly streetscaping and urban design. You're doing a number of interesting projects here in the town, including one that's coming up on Yonge Street, the streetscape plan in the downtown. Very exciting project. Making sure that aligns to and connects well. That'll be a huge destination. It is today. I live in Aurora. My family walks to that and bikes to that. Biking's a little tricky, but it's a great location. Recognizing that the implementation of this plan takes time, takes coordination, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong also with the implementation plan changing over time from what we've put in this master plan. We came up with a strategy in terms of timing that we thought is a best sort of starting point for you. But as you move forward in the years to come, you'll be, as council and as a committee and as staff, making different decisions, moving projects up, deferring projects for different reasons. Maybe you'll have an opportunity to access funds from other levels of government. You might get access to funds as part of the work that's happening with Metrolinx in terms of the double tracking of the corridor and the ultimate electrification of these corridors. And so, in consideration of that and partnership is really a good strategy to have as a municipality going forward. Next slide. So, working with business improvement areas and all the various players, which is recommendation number 10, I think is really important. Some municipalities approve plans and staff, move forward thinking that, well, we did the engagement and the consultation and let's proceed. But similar to, road projects and other capital projects, it's important to engage your partners along the way. And so we're encouraging staff as they move forward, just to remember, look at the project, think about the stakeholders. Is York Region Transit a consideration? For example, the work that's happening in downtown Yonge, the Main Street, it will impact York Region Transit. It will impact York Region itself. It will impact a number of different people. So that's just one example of a project that's multifaceted and really requires input for various stakeholders, through the planning process and design process, but can really facilitate a successful project if you do it in the right order and you give it the time and engage those people. Next. Education and encouragement, really important too. It deserves its own slide. Utilizing staff and working with public health from the region and other groups to develop programming, including programming through your rec centers, some of it you're already doing, is really important. You have lots of resources in this municipality. You can access a variety of different key stakeholder groups, including this committee. And, it's important that people understand, especially children, but, even older adults about walking. I can't tell you how many people think, when they're cycling on Maltese Trail and they come to an intersection as a cyclist, it's fine to ride through the crosswalk. It's actually against the law. You can't ride your bike through a crosswalk. Lots of people do, but it is technically against the law. So, you really need to dismount or walk unless there's a cross ride, which you have now, John Westway in Wellington, where you do have a cross ride. Cyclists are legally allowed to ride across that because it's part of your off-road trail system and Maltese path system. So just simple things like that we think is really important. And you already have a great program here through your recreation centers, and considering training and working with third parties to come in and do sessions, to train kids on how to ride, making sure they understand the importance of helmets. More importantly, making sure they understand the rules of the road and how to operate their bicycle. What is a stop sign and what are they supposed to do with a stop sign? And when they approach an intersection, and if they're for some reason on the sidewalk, if they're a young child, they need to understand that they have to stop. They can't just proceed through. There's so many things that really we as residents and also taxpayers, it's important that we communicate these things to the young generation that's coming after us. Not that I'm feeling old, but I'm just saying. Next slide. So education, encouragement, same kind of thing. A structured program, developing a foundation of programs, building upon that program and letting it grow over time is the strategy. Now, you already have a foundation for many programs here in Aurora. We're encouraging you, you access summer students through your recreation systems during those seasons, getting them involved in groups. The various programming is a great way of sort of capturing kids' interest in active transportation, taking them on trails for trail hikes, walking to a destination to look at something, and teaching them how to ride a bike, and working with partners, including engaging the police to come out and have a fun event. This is all part of a multifaceted program. Next slide. So some of the planning, phasing, and costing recommendations. We are in the process of finalizing the cost of the entire network, but just one that you see here for item 2 is pedestrian cycling networks. It's identified the cost. Short term, it's currently looking at 27 million, and longer term, 28.3 million as part of the long-term phasing strategy. This might change a little bit as we refine the cost based on the edits from staff and the final work on the plan. But it's just important that you understand that this is a big investment for the town and for its residents. And it's important that there's a strategy in place that's based on a solid rationale, goals, objectives, criteria, applying best practices that others are using and have been endorsed, designing these things in a way that reduce risks and liability for all the users. That was part of this whole approach in developing this master plan. Item 5 is important. So there are a number of grade separations identified in the plan, the complexity of them, and especially the ones related to rail crossings, Metrolinks. It's challenging to understand how to phase them, how to estimate the cost of them. So we're recommending that staff consider a request to council when the time is right to undertake a design feasibility Class EA type study to group the various crossings into one study and complete a design feasibility study, engaging the various partners that would be involved in the approval process to understand the feasibility of a crossing, what it would cost, what's involved, the kind of engineering, utility work that need to be considered, environmental impacts, because those things aren't really known today. And this master plan is it's beyond the scope of this master plan, but it's important to do. And I know some of you on this committee, are really confident that, this is a really important approach. And, you're seeing big changes in this town with the improvements to transit. This is the opportunity to think about it. I would suggest that you not hold off too long in doing this study, because even though you don't think Metrolinx is doing a lot of work visually, there's a lot of work happening that's moving forward to the double tracking and the ultimate electrification. The electrification is a big deal. The double tracking is a big deal, but the electrification is an interesting deal because in most cases, it means that all your crossings need to be grade separated. Electrification is a unique design that will be applied around the corridor. It is possible to double track and not have some grade separations in the initial phases, but as they ramp up service, two-way service, and their goal in time during, if the numbers are right, could be 15 or 20-minute intervals. Can you imagine having trains going at 15 and 20-minute intervals crossing Wellington, and what that would do to the impact of movement of people through this town? So grade separations are really important, and we encourage the town to move forward on this, and I think Metrolinx will be a willing partner in a study like this as well. The last one, maintenance recommendations. As you implement infrastructure, you need to think about operational planning and costing. So it's important that as you start implementing this infrastructure, you revisit how you're maintaining the infrastructure. Do you need to budget for more equipment? As you, for example, roll out more on-road cycling infrastructure, can you use your current equipment, or do you need additional equipment? As you roll out more sidewalks, do you have enough sidewalk plow equipment to maintain your current level of service, or do you need to invest in new equipment to, respond to the increase in sidewalks that you're building? Things like that are really important. And unfortunately, some municipalities focus on the capital and don't focus on enough time and energy on planning forward on how they're going to maintain the infrastructure that they're investing in. So I encourage you to think at the same time as you plan and invest in infrastructure, you at that time also plan on how you're going to maintain and operate it. Next slide. So next steps, next. So I'm almost done. WSP is updating its draft report. We had some great comments from staff. We're almost done. I thought we might be done this week, but there's still a few things to do. So I'm pretty confident we'll have a draft report back to staff by the end of next week for their final review and comment. And, pending the comments from staff, I understand that currently intention is to present to town council for their information as early as March 5th, 2024. So next slide. So on behalf of my team, WSP, I'd like to thank all of you for the opportunity to work with you and to work with residents. As a resident, it was awesome to have the opportunity. It's rare that you get the opportunity to do what you do full time in the community you live in. I am very vested in this community, know that. So I am really excited. I think this really is the right network for our town, and it will take time and money. But we need to be patient, but we also need to be ambitious and move forward in implementation in year one and start implementing the plan. And that's my recommendation to all of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. So we have, Dave, maybe you want to take a seat here because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions for you. Are you sure? Could be a while. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor, and I'll just read it just so we know the context about the discussions. One, that the memorandum regarding traffic transportation master plan draft report presentation be received, and two, that the active transportation and traffic safety advisory committee comments regarding active transportation master plan draft report presentation be received and referred to staff for consideration and further actions as appropriate. So first, do we have any other staff that want to weigh in any way before I open up to the committee?
I'd just like to take the opportunity on behalf of staff, and I think the Active Transportation Advisory Committee as well, to thank WSP and Dave for all the time you've spent meeting and presenting, and the effort that's gone into this plan. It's been lovely working with you and your team, Dave. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? It's close proximity. Okay, let's open up to the committee. Any comments? Questions? Now is the time. Seeing none. There we go.
Thank you, Dave. Again, great work. And it doesn't go unnoticed that you do live in this community and you speak seriously and passionately about that. I think myself and other members of the committee share that passion, and we want to see Aurora a place where active transportation, biking, walking can, be more user friendly. And this is a good sort of roadmap to help us get there.
Thank you. Any other comments? There must be. Anyone? Go ahead.
Again, I thank you for the work, obviously. I think that when we actually look at the master proposal and we go through it, the key areas from my perspective anyways, which I'll speak on my perspective, which we've talked about in length in our meetings, is the pedestrian crossings, the proposed pedestrian crossings, so that we're not separating Aurora into quadrants that you can't get across. So when we look at the movement of people to the different infrastructure areas within the town, we need access to them. And the only way to give access is the pedestrian crossings. And we have a short timeline to push that through because Metrolinx is moving ahead with their project. So we have to get on it or else we're going to lose the ability to do it.
Thank you. Good point. Klaus, just push your button. Yep, go ahead.
It's green, yeah. Yeah, we started out by a motto, Aurora Connects. And I'm going to say, I'm not confident that this instrument will do what I'm looking for. That is based on my experience in terms of the Trails Master Plan. We had a great master plan, or at least a drawing like this here in a map. And when it came down to implementing key sections, a 2C area in particular, you were just left out. It wasn't done. Council didn't feel comfortable going ahead with the proposals that we had made, on which we had worked a lot at the committee level. We worked much more on that than we have worked on this active transportation plan. So my confidence that there will be implementation at the political level without a real push from this level, I won't have it. That's all there is to it. Now, one of the things that we could have in this as a recommendation would be to have a plan whereby we measure the progress on this plan, on this implementation, and then have a report on how that is going ahead. Like a yearly report would be my suggestion, because the more we put our minds to it, the more regularly we do this, the more we are going to be dedicated to this. If we let it go for 2 years, then I think it's just too long in between. And I know there's a problem with finding progress in short time periods, but if the reports aren't there, they're not required, then you're not going to see the progress. So I'd like to see something of a standard of implementation that gets measured, something along those lines. And I don't see that in here. Now, I have to say, I received this document in the draft that you just presented, Dave, this afternoon, early afternoon. So I had about an hour and a half to be able to do what I didn't have any more time than that. So I haven't reviewed everything, but I don't see anything in there that will accomplish what I'm just mentioning here. So that is certainly one of them. The other thing is,
Sorry, Klaus, maybe, I don't know if anyone on that side just want to address, see if they can address that point there.
okay,
Dave or staff.
Through the chair, it is in the report. What you haven't seen is the details in the main report that has been drafted. So Klaus, there is a recommendation, and I mentioned it earlier in the presentation, with a recommendation that staff report back on an annual basis. And one of the things to do is to report back on, on the year before, we had X amount of dollars that were approved by staff and council to invest in AT or sidewalks or trails to report back, where are we on that? Provide us an update. Has it been implemented? Is it being designed? What's the timing for construction? And then tell us what is planned for the year that comes, identifying how much money staff anticipate it will cost. So council each year will see that report and they'll see the progress on how they're progressing. I think I agree with you 100% that, it's important to have a report. It doesn't have to be overly lengthy, but having some KPIs, some indicators in it to sort of demonstrate how the plan's been being implemented. I said in the presentation, if you recall, that the implementation plan is sort of our best estimate and our guidance at the beginning for staff to use. And as they move forward, things will change around. It doesn't mean that things should slow down. It just means things will change around. But having an annual report will be the opportunity for staff and this committee, which I think should participate in that annual report actually and review it before it goes to council, to see how things are progressing. And again, it depends on council's decision on the available capital that they're able to provide to implement the plan at the end of the day, right? That's why we elect them. They're making those decisions annually. And but I think having an annual report that this committee also has the opportunity to review is a great idea.
Thank you. Would it be possible to get the full draft plan to the committee? I suspect it's not a large document. Could we get it emailed to the committee and have at least them have a copy of the full plan? Yep. Yeah.
Am I on? Yeah. We were definitely planning to do that, Councillor Gallo. We were just finalizing the draft plan. It's about 180 pages, I think.
Yeah,
It's quite large. So what our intent here was to try to pull out the recommendations and all the maps to kind of give you that important chunk of the plan. So you didn't have to get through 180 pages. We were planning to attach that to our as an appendix to the council report for March 5th. So we can send it at that time when we publish that.
Okay, it's a little frustrating, I'll be honest, because I don't want to use this committee, and I'm going to say this because I'm a little disappointed, because I don't want to use this committee as just a council checkbox that it filtered through them. There's some excellent minds at this table that can provide a lot of quality input, and if we don't provide them the opportunity to comment, not having, at least in this case, a full document, or waiting until that document is complete, then giving it to them for comments instead of tonight, kind of your summary of this, and then have them comment on a 30-page summary of a over 100-page document. That's not my interpretation when I wanted to start this committee, to just check off a box. And if we're going to go down that road, you'll see me off this committee. I don't want it to continue that way. I don't want to waste these people's time. I don't want to waste anybody's time. But let's use them. They're volunteering their time and they have great ideas.
So another option could be we could move it, the presentation to council. It was a for information report to give council an opportunity to also digest the report. So the intent was for everyone to have an opportunity to digest the report over that time. And then we would bring it back to council for endorsement once council's had a chance to review. It's a for information report for March 5th right now.
And I think that's a good, I'd love to listen to the committee. Do you want to see the full report and go into the details? Yes. So yes, that's exactly what I think should be done. And even if we have to push that March 5th, I think there's value in that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be rushing this, and I want to get it done as quickly as we can. But again, I don't want to use this committee as just a check mark from council that they looked at it and they said it was okay. So I'll leave it up to staff to arrange that. We'll arrange it for another agenda item, and we'll get the full report to you if everyone's okay with that. But let's at least continue today, and you've probably seen this, and maybe provide any interim comments until that happens. Go ahead, Klaus.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Dave, for confirming that there will be such a check mark basically on this progress. And, I have also had concerns about not getting enough into the walking side of this. I think we will have more trips walking than we have cycling. And we owe it to the Aurora residents that they will be able to walk where they want to go. Now you have identified, I think, early on some destinations that had a lot of cars around, like the Shepherd's Bush, for instance, has a whole bunch of cars every day. And I'm quite sure there are walkers that are going there, or just about all of them, mostly with dogs and so on, but it doesn't matter. My interest would be to find out where you have heavy destinations indicated by car parking and car traffic. You should be investigating. There should be an examination of what the opportunities, what are the potential for the traffic, for active transportation traffic would be if there were crossings across a major, like that were tailored to the active transportation people. In the last committee meeting, we had a report, or we had a request to approve the school traffic crossings. And in it, there was a criterion that pertained to this warrant business. And it was, if there was no crossing, safe crossing within 200 meters of the school crossing that we were talking about, then that would be something that would be satisfying putting in the crossing. So there is an indication in our documentation that the crossing should be no more than 400 meters apart. That's basically what that comes to. And we haven't paid attention to this type of thing. We have not paid attention to what is convenient for the pedestrian traffic in this town in terms of crossing major highways and railroad tracks. And that is something that we need to pay attention to. In this case, we would have to, basically lean on Metrolinx, that this is a valid criterion. It's something you have to pay attention to. You can't just ignore these things. If you're talking out of one mouth, you want to have a walkable community, and another one, you say, well, we're not going to open up the level crossings because of safety. And it isn't your and my safety, it's their safety, the traffic of the body, the equipment. Then if they're not going to concede a little bit along those lines, then what's the use of having a provincial transportation agency that should be leading instead of objecting and being a barrier to active transportation? And we're laying down, we're not doing anything about that. So when we start out by saying Aurora connects, then we in fact don't do anything about the connections that are meaningful, then, give me a break. What am I doing here? Why should I sit around here? Because I'm also having concerns about implementation stages based on my Aurora Trails Master Plan experience. And I've spent a lot of time in this area, like advocacy for active transportation, basically. And if that's all for nothing, then there's no point in kicking around here. I have a lot of stuff on the go. I never have enough hours in the day, even though I'm retired. But,
Well, Klaus, I'm going to interrupt for a second because I think it's unfair on two fronts. The first front is the amount of work that you've done in terms of the trails in the town. And as you know, you've been acknowledged by that. There's a big sign on one of them with your name on it. And secondly, the amount that the town has done. Perhaps it's not at the level that you wish. Your bar is extremely high. But we're here to try to fix that. And I know you didn't have a lot of time to review the document, but let's hope we can get it to him in short order so that you will have enough time and then review it and comment on the document so that we at least have a sense of what your perspective is on this particular master plan.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Apologies.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve?
Just adding to what Klaus said, this may be anecdotal. Dave may have more data on this, but I mean, I just wanted to agree with Klaus is that walking, we talk a lot about bike lanes, bike infrastructure, all this kind of thing, but there's probably more walking going on of active transportation in Aurora now than there is cycling. Just from what I see, just from anecdotal observations. And the barriers are much lower. I mean, you don't need a bike, you just walk. You just need shoes and attitude, and off you go. And I think we might, you get caught up, and I tend to be this way too. You get caught up in all the bike stuff, but really, I mean, there could be some simple things or some expensive things, like railroad crossings that could really, really, facilitate great and much better walking active transportation. Am I summing that up well, Klaus? Okay.
Thank you. Gino, could you just push your button so I know which?
You're going to time me? Dave, thank you. So I'm going to come from a different angle. I didn't have an opportunity to see what was sent out to me. I'm looking at what you're presenting. I'm going to ask you to really break up the plans a little bit better. I see existing pedestrian network, excellent. Existing cycling network, excellent. Now I want to see proposed pedestrian network. Okay. I don't want to see proposed multi-use path or off-road trails. I'd like to see proposed multi-use and maybe proposed trails, separate maps, or showing existing, that same type of logic. What's existing, what's proposed. Okay. Two different things. Multi-use path is within the road allowance. Off trail is in the trails. You can combine it, but I think I like to see that separation. You have proposed cycling network. Again, proposed multi-use trail network phasing, and similar, show me the phasing, but it has to be separated. The other concern that I noted on here is that I know we're moving forward with multi-use path, but I think so that, again, where the jargon comes in here, multi-use paths are not appropriate in all locations. Typically, the majority, I'm going to say residents, prefer to cycle in boulevard. That has been demonstrated, in other municipalities. There isn't, I would say if they had a preference, if money was of no concern, you typically like to build in boulevard facilities. Those are called cycle track. Is there any reason, I guess my question right now is why you didn't include cycle track within one of your categories in here. So cycle track, just to let everybody know, it could be next to the side in boulevard facilities, next to the sidewalk or next to the curb. Typically you want to pull it away from the curb. York Region has been doing that. You'll see that as some of the BRT projects, some of the recent ones, but now the desire is to move it inside to give people more comfort, and it has it. So Dave, if you could answer why cycle track was not identified.
Pathways are in the boulevard, and then some corridors are in addition to sidewalks, depending on the corridor. For example, the section that's being proposed on Yonge from Bloomington North, of sidewalks and a multi-use pathway, not just for cyclists, it'd be for runners and different users. It's similar to a cycle track. It's two-way on one side of the road rather than unidirectional. We have separated bike lanes in here, and when you read the report, it comes in different types. The separated bike lanes could be on road between the curbs with a buffer, with bollards. They could have precast curbs. It could also be behind the curb in the form of a cycle track. So we had this discussion with staff about different terminology. We will take your comment back. I think the plan does include those things, but just so we're clear, multi-use paths are in the boulevard of the road. And if there are sidewalks, then one would argue you could call them a two-way cycle track and only dedicate them. But because there's a lot of recreational users here in the town, we kept it as a multi-use path because we figured it wouldn't just be cyclists. It would be people running with their dogs and jogging and things like that who don't want to be on the sidewalk with pedestrians who may be traveling at a slower rate. So that is in the master plan. It's consistent with OTM Book 18. It's consistent with Vaughn's master plan as well. The only thing that's different is the focus on cycle tracks as unidirectional pieces of infrastructure that are behind the curbs, separated from sidewalks, only reserved for cyclists that are like 1.8 to 2.5 meters wide. They're not flushed out here, in part because we don't have a lot of roads where you can accommodate them, to be honest with you. The only way you could do it is, push out the right of ways. And most of those roads are in built up areas. It's not really practical or realistic. So we looked at some other solutions, but it's still in the plan.
Is it considered now on let's use Young Street? Because I travel that portion from Bloomington to Henderson almost every other day. And is it the intent to have multi-use path on both sides, the east and west side, or just on one side?
So we're undertaking a detailed design for that this year. It's just about to release the request for proposal for that. And one of the options to look at through design is looking at, should we have multi-use paths on both sides, sidewalks on both sides, or do a multi-use path on one and a sidewalk on the other?
Okay. So the other thing I want to note is that, as you are aware, because I am working with York Region Rapid Transit, it is the intention of York Region to continue with the bus rapid transit system all the way up Young Street, basically connecting from Newmarket right down to Richmond Hill where it terminates. I know that York Region has jurisdiction up to the bridge, and then Aurora has jurisdiction from the bridge to just,
North of Orchard Heights.
South of Orchard Heights, you have direction. So I would suggest, and this is going to be my suggestion, and then again, this is something that my colleagues have taught me, and Dave, you're well aware of some of them, is that in again, we don't have the high densities, but I would think in the core, we don't have space in the core, but I do believe in separating the facilities, because as the densities increase, as everyone aware, you have more conflict, right? So that's one of the things that we're implementing in our high density cores. And given that in the future, we might have a bus rapid transit running through the corridor here. Is there opportunity? Again, when I look at cycling facilities on the regional road, again, I know Aurora has taken the position that, they will fund and build it. Not everybody's in that agreement in terms of that. They, again, under the municipal Act, sidewalks are the only obligation, and for local tier municipalities, cycling is undefined along with street lighting. So when I'm hoping that York Region participates in some of the funding of that facility, they typically don't. There is opportunity for them to build. My concern with this stretch of road, however, is that York Region is responsible to create the platform. And again, this gets into implementation, which is part of my second comment. Implementation on regional roads is problematic. And I'm going to speak to that because I deal with it almost every day. York Region, based on the way we're structured right now, is responsible for the road allowance. And again, if they don't provide, they take on the DC funding to fund that platform. If you're moving forward with that stretch on Young Street from Bloomington to the bridge, they have to create the platform. You're going to have to fight to get that platform created. It's going to be a struggle. I'm going to note that because, again, funding is limited at York Region because it's which project do you do first and where do you do it? So I'm noting that. From an implementation, I'm going to speak to, because we all know when you prepare a master plan, it's a guide, right? It informs the DC study. And again, without money, without resources, it doesn't happen. And I know with the plan that you're moving forward with, I concur with the yearly report that's being done elsewhere. It's a good measure in terms of what you complete. But I hate to say it, it's always about funding and having that money to be able to put it in there. And, I look at Aurora and we're almost built out. So I don't know where you're really at the end of the day. I would suggest one of the other things that you look for all the available grants, have a grant specialist. If somebody's not, you really should be looking at taking advantage. I know other municipalities have dedicated staff who search for that. And I think for Aurora, funding of what we're proposing is going to be a struggle because, again, DC funding is limited. you know, and I know I see what you guys are doing, and I think that's going to be the struggle I'd like to see. You know, again, I guess my question back to you, Nancy, is the DC study. I think your last update was 2019. I know with all the changes, I think you guys are looking to do an update to your DC study. So this will be, just to let you know, Klaus, this will be part of that. How much you'll be able to get in there, I don't know, because again, unless you redevelop, you know, there's not much land left. That's the problem. Aurora is small, you know, and that's where I kind of struggle, where you feel frustrated because you said nothing gets built. The sad reality is if the money's not there, you can't really put it into the budget, you know. And I just want to note that from the implementation, that has to be acknowledged. And I know your frustration because I, you know, plan and program in my other life, and it's something where, as it relates to implementation. So I leave it at that in terms, I'd like the maps to be separated as one of my comments. I may have further comments, so I'd like the opportunity to read your document. Again, I'm going to look at Aurora's different, right? And our densities are a lot lower. So I speak to cycle track, and that's why I kind of think, okay, let's make sure, because you didn't even show it in the example, right? I know we talk about multi-use path, but if we're going to do it, then let's do it on both sides. That's all I would say, but it's costly. That's the other problem too. Right.
Thank
So
you.
that's my comment. Current comments, besides all the ones I sent in emails. Thank you.
Maybe,
David?
Gina, if I could just respond on a couple of things. Regarding the funding component, there is a funding section that talks about exactly what you just said, the importance of pursuing partnerships with other levels of government and transit agencies. Funding for LRTs and BRTs, similar to a lesson learned with Davis now, and that was incorporated in Highway 7, funding provided by the provincial government to build the extension, for example, if York Region is partnering with them to build the extension of the transit system along Yonge Street, funding for the pedestrian cycling component along the corridor is eligible as well as part of the partnering deal with the province. Now, it wasn't 10 years ago, but it is now. So when that project comes forward and there's a design opportunity, it's important that they know that this is a infrastructure that's been designed, that's planned by the municipality. And to be honest with you, if it's happening sooner, it's something that town staff should talk to the region before you actually spend the money yourself and build it, because there may be an opportunity to have it cost shared. The other thing, you talked about in terms of the cycle tracks, we'll go back and revisit the text a little bit in here, but it is in there. It's talking about separated bike lanes. The last thing about the separation of the maps, I didn't mean to smile when you said it, but we've gone through a lot of iterations of moving things on and off the maps. I'm not a huge fan of separating existing and proposed trails or sidewalks from the same map, because it's important that people see and understand why we're proposing the addition of things. They need to see the existing network on the same map. So my preference would be to group them. So existing and proposed by facility type, which I've tried to do, but we'll go back and staff and have a conversation about that to see if we can tighten it up. The pedestrian map we got from GIS from staff that we used from the TMP is a bit of a different format. So maybe we could go and think about how to revisit the look and feel of that as it's currently presented in the plan to address part of your concern. But, if it was my decision, I would leave existing and proposed by facility type on the maps. I don't think it means much to anyone when they look at it and they have to find the other map, have it side by side and try to figure out why you're proposing this missing link. What's it connecting to? Well, it's connecting to something that's existing, but it's on another map. One approach we could do, though, is we could take some of that information as layers and put it in the appendix of the report, just break it out a bit. So that's something we can talk about too, with staff. Anyways, good comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It bothers me a little bit when I keep hearing that we haven't done a lot or that type of thing. I've been at council long enough to know what we spent on the David Tomlinson Nature Reserve. Marco, how many on St. John's and Wellington when the reconstruction? How many underpasses did? 2 underpasses there at I don't know, 3 million. It's a little unfair. We haven't dropped the ball, but there's always room for improvement. And to large part to you, Klaus, that have been very influential in a lot of these things. I just want to hope that you're a little more happy about the progress that we've done and the improvements that can come. Sure, Klaus. Just push your button. Push your button. Is it? Oh, yeah.
So red. Okay, now we go. The two things that tie into implementation. One is that we have finally recognized the active transportation as part of transportation in this town. Now, to me, they should have an equal status to road work and so on and other hard services. So road services and well, the other services, they're going in before any buildings go onto a subdivision plan, or when you redevelop, before you redevelop into the building stage. Now, I would think that we should be affording active transportation the same status, that we should be putting in the trails ahead of the buildings going in. That is something that has been neglected all along. We've had 3 underpasses across Leslie and St. John's, but there are no trails that connect to the underpasses. We spent a lot of money on the underpasses, but we are not paying any attention to getting on with the trails that should be leading under these things. If this were...
David, are they on they're proposed?
First 10 years.
Yep.
We're very focused on making sure that we got it right. I even drew it incorrectly and they cut and I had to move it. So no, it's the trail team here is very much focused on making connections and extending the trails to the underpasses that have been implemented to date. Absolutely.
Okay, can I just continue then? So maybe they will come, but I've been looking for a long time already. Now I lost it. I was afraid of that. Let's go on with something else. I'll come back to this other point in a minute, okay?
So I just forgot, of course, one of the critical things, because I know we were discussing it. Are we looking at, and I guess this will go to Nancy, entrenching whatever is required into the official plan, making sure that certain things or what needs to be is going to be incorporated so that we could get some of the developers to do things. I'm going to speak to St. John's, because I think in one of my emails, everybody was saying, what are the improvements on St. John's? I said, unfortunately, it's a regional road, and I already checked just to see when the region has plans for it, and it's out there. I think we will all be dead and gone maybe before it gets built. Yes, west of Yonge. But I think we have to take opportunity, and I demonstrated, sometimes you may not have the boulevard there, but you need a walking path, because it really is, and it's a requirement you have to put into draft plan conditions, where you basically got it to the developer, you need to connect to existing. Cycling something, even an interim, you really need to put that obligation on, because it was a lost opportunity. When they got the scrapers running and doing the grading work out there, it's easy to get them to grade the boulevard, put Jersey barriers, similar to something that we did, in Vaughan on Rutherford Road, and that was there for almost 10 years. And I showed you guys that we did, just to provide a walking surface. I think you can still do it. Squeeze it in there, even if it's 1.5 meters, you can squeeze it in there based on what the existing shoulder is. The York region will agree to it. They've allowed it in other municipalities, and I think you should give serious consideration to that subdivision if you can get it done. I don't know if you imposed or if there were any requirements, to get that developer, or the windows of that opportunity has gone. But it's a shame with a private school going in there and another subdivision that people are going to want to walk. So, and similar on I hate to say it, on Yonge Street, all those subdivision you went in there, you should have had them build the boulevard for you as they were going in, those small sections. Take that opportunity, saying you need to create the platform, right?
So,
Push the region.
So Shining Hill, why don't we see here? what the status of the Shining Hill is from somebody, maybe Marco or let me see if I can. Yeah.
Sorry, through you, Councillor Gallo. So Gino, yeah, that was a challenge with Shining Hill. So, they requested I'm not sure if it's a multi-use path or a sidewalk along St. John's. It was one of their conditions, but the developer can't do it without the base, right? And that's the problem. And so the region really should have that in their construction program. It should have been in there already. The problem with, and the condition of St. John's west of, right? There's, I think, two creek crossings. And so we're going to be securing through condition funds from the developer to construct that sidewalk across their entire frontage. But they can't build it because, it's a huge undertaking. They'll need to do an EA without that expanded road base. And that's our challenge, right? And that's, I think, the difference between some of the southern municipalities, some of the regional, capital works projects to the south of us are further advanced than up here in Aurora and further north. So that was a challenge. We had a lot of discussion with them, and I think some of the staff really didn't understand that developer can't go in and construct a sidewalk with that 2-lane rural road cross section. But we secured the funds, and then when the region does go in there, we'll have some funds, and it really needs to be part of the regional road improvement when that happens.
So that's going to be part of the better deal that I think we have to push York region. And, as part of our, I'm sorry, at the end of the day, okay, local sidewalks are the responsibility of local municipalities, right? And it's unfortunate we're tasked with that. It's also an obligation of York region to put in their draft plan conditions to create that platform, get the developers. I understand they collect, that they collect DCs for the improvements on St. John side roads. Okay. The intent is to collect it over a period of time so that they can widen. I think these are lost opportunities where even to build an interim asphalt, it doesn't even have to be in its program until you acquire, you need something. Where are these people going to, because I will state, having experience, because I've dealt with it, you will get the complaints going to council, your local, can't remember who's in that area, but asking, I need a sidewalk. Can you build a sidewalk? And what's the response going to be? So this is where I think, again, it's the status quo is no longer acceptable. We need to really move forward with it and trying to get even an interim solution. I truly believe you could stick something in there. I know there's ditches. We can always put culverts and just do an interim. It won't be the standard, but as long as we make it safe, it's outside. I'm sure you've already dedicated lands. I'm hoping you've dedicated land with everything that's being redeveloped, that you can at least put something in there and go around some of the existing trees.
So just to provide, for the sake of a master plan, just to confirm that sidewalk or that multi-use path is identified in the mapping somehow, some way, at some time, it'll be implemented. It's there as a discussion for the master plan.
Yes. Sorry. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Owen.
But it was policy. So that was my intent in terms of implementation. Really, that should be something where we're looking at to get the developers to do it, get them to build it right away, as opposed to waiting for capital to come around and try to do it after the fact. There's a delay. People move in right away, have family, have kids. How do I walk? You didn't give me anything.
Yeah. St. John's is unique.
Okay. So I just leave that with all of you because it's something that we have implemented where we get them to build to the existing, even a temporary, as part of the review of the engineering drawings.
Owen and then Steve.
That's it.
Sorry. I just leave it. 1, 2. There you go.
All right. My
Trying to figure this out.
my comment was, I think Gino covered most of it. It's really about the funding mechanism. And I understand the regional roads and the restrictions to the regional roads and what you can do and the widening and the cost of that, but it really comes into the planning stage prior to about getting when you give the permit for development, you build into that some planning. So you have a temporary pathway until the region expands roads. And even if you don't, if it's not against a regional road, you still build that plan in. And it just covers off the capital cost of what you want as a master plan to implement, to get it done from a funding mechanism. Went a lot deeper into it, and I think Klaus brought it up as well. So I think we're all on the same page in terms of from a funding mechanism, how to get it going, but it has to be done way upstream than this. Now, the other on that Signal Hill, just quickly, the St. Andrews across the Quick Copy property to the intersection have built that pathway, which reset back off the road because it has to reset back off the regional road. Why could not something be temporary done heading up towards a school set back similar to what they've done to that point? I know
So
there's a cost involved to it.
We did it. They didn't. Do
I know
it.
you did.
The town.
I know, but
Well,
you're
you
going
did.
to have.
We all did.
We did it, but you have a lot of development going in there, and you have a school there, and that is going to quickly ramp up into being an issue. So something needs to be addressed in that spot. And that structure is a great temporary structure. It's not a permanent wood. It's not going to last, but it's a good.
It better be. We spent a lot of money on it. It better be a long. That's not a temporary structure.
It will need maintenance going forward. That's where I'm going with it, right? It's not maintenance free. So like along St. John's, along where the ponds are, same thing, right? I mean, but it is a good proposed idea to push forward in that area. Anyways, it's more about that capital.
So just stitching a few things together, this is a question for Dave. And am I to understand that there's language in this that would, in what you're proposing, there's language in this that would embed into future development that, as Klaus was saying, that like active transportation, walking, cycling is all part of the development going forward? I say this because, John, you and I sat in a public planning meeting last night, and we listened to hours and hours of deputations and discussions and a presentation from a developer for a proposal. I didn't hear active transportation talked about once. Not once. Was maybe mentioned a few times walking along, St. John's, but it was about cars, traffic, and parking constantly. It was never talked about. So do you know where I'm going with this, Dave? So how do we, we change? I know you're going to will there be language in there that would sort of embed this into the development process going forward? And this is more ethereal. Like, how do we change that whole process and what went on last night? And so that people are actually talking about in the development process, yay or nay, where active transportation fits in.
So I can't answer for staff. They might want to add on to this, but more often than not, the master plan map that's in an AT master plan becomes a schedule in the OP. The town's new OP has the trail schedule. It references an active transportation schedule. It's just not in the plan yet, but it will be once this plan is finished, is my understanding, I expect, because it references it. It even has an appendix letter in it. Once that's embedded in that plan and approved by the province, and I work for a firm that works for many, many developers. The OP is an important guidepost to think about what the expectation is on the part of a municipality. If it's in the OP, if there's a schedule in the OP, there's not a lot of wiggle room. The expectation is high that you need to come up with a strategy to respond to it. So having it in the OP, I think, is, highly, highly recommended. And I can see that the town is already planning to do that.
So sorry, I just want to clarify what you said, that this master plan, once it's completed, it'll have a stronger link and a stronger weight to the it's not draft OP anymore, the current OP, than the Trails master plan had previously.
It's similar. The Trails master plan also has a schedule in your OP, a map. It's just that the map for the AT plan, which is in addition to your Trails schedule, is not currently in the document, but the appendix is there. It refers to an AT schedule. So once this plan is done and council receives it for information, and staff then will go through the process of having that inserted into the appendix of your OP.
So just to go full circle in terms of some of the comments, developer comes similar to last night and puts in an application. What triggers a discussion about active transportation that needs to be part of a particular planning proposal?
Yeah, I can jump in and then others can add. Council Gallo. So right now, similar to any other master plan document, like our trail plan, even when we before we receive an application, when we have our consultation meeting with a potential applicant who's coming in with a proposal, we have everybody around the table. So for instance, someone, engineering and someone from parks. So parks is there to speak to not only, implementation of parks, do we need a park plan, et cetera. But, Gary's first comment is trails, right? We need to implement the trail that's identified in our trails plan into your proposal. And now that we have, an active transportation plan, there's reference in our OP document. So developers will be aware of that and staff will guide them to that document as well. And, Gary and Nancy's group as well will be providing that input.
So that is new in terms of the active transportation. That is new.
That's new.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. There.
So I also want to note, also as part of that, that's what I was saying, you need to entrench it, but also you need to have the money to do it, which is one of the things why I asked about the DC study, because you're hoping that everything that gets identified, you're going to cost it out. Okay, how are we going to pay for this? What is there potential? So when redevelopment is in that area, yeah, you're gonna collect DCs or maybe use those DC monies to say to the developers part of your negotiations. Okay, you build it, right? We might provide you a slight, it's always give and take in your negotiations. There's an opportunity to get the work done immediately, or if not, at least collect for that future work when it's going to be delivered by staff and under a capital project. So that's the implementation part that's critical to a master plan, because again, this document, yeah, if you don't entrench it and you don't put the money towards it, it's nice paper, but and again, the yearly report, absolutely, that's a good measure. I can give you an example.
Thank you. Yep, Klaus, just push your button. Getting better at this.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. Am I hearing that there will be a representative at the pre-application consultation meeting? Is this what I'm hearing? Like this is when it all starts. The developer comes for a pre-application consultation meeting, and that is where a lot of the groundwork gets laid, I think, for what will happen later on. So are we going to have somebody there to advocate for active transportation is my question.
So I think I heard correctly. Parks Department will be advocating, provided obviously whatever development is in place, that there are identified active transportation trails, whatever. As part of that development. Yes, Parks will be advocating for that.
Okay, well, great to hear. Yeah. One other question. This is to you, Dave. We have catchment areas for schools. Are you going to make recommendations relative to each school having an active transportation routing plan to the school for the catchment area? Is that going to be part of the?
Yes, we have a recommendation that talks about safe routes to school plans for Aurora that should be developed. And actually the development of the network and the density of the network played really close, consideration to where all the schools were. We wanted to make sure, especially the high schools, that we connected directly to them, and that the grade schools are well connected by the sidewalk system. There's some cycling to the elementary schools. Maybe there should be more. But many of them are on local roads or local lower volume collector roads. The high schools are, basically absent really good cycling infrastructure to get kids to those schools. So that's why Murray and some of the other network implementation projects we have in the first 10 years have been identified. So the answer is yes, it's very important. And, you know, like I said, on the education programming side, we need to reach out to kids and their parents, by the way. It's not just the kids. One of the things that we're finding is parents have sort of fallen into this comfort zone of taking their kids everywhere by car. And, you know, because they're, you know, it's all safety, security. But they don't spend enough time and effort, nor do they want their schools necessarily to communicate to the kids about how they should walk. You know, what should they do in intersections? How should they ride their bike? How do they, you know, interrelate with motor vehicle traffic when they're going to and from school? There used to be a lot of that kind of training in our school systems. Some schools, you know, the principals won't even allow those programs to come in. Others, where the principals are, you know, a lot more forward thinking, or welcome those groups in to have those training sessions every year. The school boards have those programs that are designed for, I can't remember the two grades. One's in elementary, and I think the other one's in grade 9 or 10. But it's always relying on the principal. It's their decision whether they come or not. But we're still recommending it. It's very important.
Yeah, I'm seeing this as one of the measurable things that going forward relative to active transportation, that each school has a plan that they can hand to their kids and say, here's your plan, how you can get to here by walking or by cycling. And it's not happening at this point. So I like to see that as something that is recommended and then followed up and a report back in 1 year.
Thank you.
So I have one question that just forgot in my note. I'm reading my notes here. We did mention at the last meeting of putting the Wellington crossing, future Metrolinx bridge as a priority. Is it mentioned in the master plan? Is it kind of defined?
The connection through that corridor.
Yes, in terms of doing the upgrades. So when Metrolinx comes, when they finally get their act together and come to the town to build a bridge, that we can say we have a multi-use path on both the east side and the west side, and you need to build that a wider boulevard. Otherwise, we're just getting a 1.5 meter sidewalk. So I want that as a priority. I don't care. And so I'm going to look for that in the report. So I'm hoping that it's specified.
You see the line in the plan. You won't see it called out. What you will see is the recommendation that the town should consider, you know, doing the feasibility study sooner than later. That's the challenge with Metrolinx. You know, why are you asking for this crossing? If you do your feasibility and demonstrate what it's going to look like, how it's going to connect, and why you want it, they're more inclined to work with you. They may not agree entirely, but they tend to be more inclined to work with you. Cities like Vaughan and Richmond Hill and Markham have learned that from previous experience, which is why we recommended that study. And how many grade separations you choose to include in that study is up to you, but the Wellington one would be the obvious one as a priority, so that, you know, staff.
Yeah, but we're talking about we're not talking about the pedestrian crossings, which are the ones in between. I was talking specifically to the one.
I get it, but that
the underpass at Wellington, and the other one that we're going to need at St. John's, because again, at the end, when we get the double track there and it's 15 minutes, it will be problematic at Wellington.
Yep. Understood. It's in there.
St. John's is just phase 2, so that's a further project. But even if it's temporary multi-use pass, then they have to put it in their plan. So we need to get, I mean, we're talking 5 to 7 years before they even get to that phase. But it gives time for a temporary path to get in multi-use, and then they have to build it in their plan when they're building the bridge structure.
I don't think there would be, through the chair, a surprise to Metrolinx. They've developed cross sections that include multi-use paths, 2 lanes of traffic, buffer zones through that. And I'm not sure where the design is yet, if it's been advanced, but they've done conceptual design in most of the crossings, just to get better appreciation about the issues, how much it's going to cost, sort of feel out municipalities to see what their thoughts are about what they're thinking. They've pretty well done that already for the vast majority of the grade separations. I know they've done it for that location. I think maybe even York Region has commented on it too. But I'm not sure it's seen much. I mean, others may know more here on staff, but I don't not sure it's advanced that far beyond that point yet, but it is in the plan.
So thank you, Dave. And I know Wellington is a regional road. So again, in terms of working with our regional partners there and making sure, I think we need to make that a priority. As I said, I think what's critical when I'm looking at this, I'm sorry, Library Square is going to open hopefully this year. We're going to have a party. And we need to also be able to link from Go, I think, to Town Park and to Library Square. And I originally made my comments back in the day when we're looking at library, and I'm kind of Yonge Street's important, because I believe in that. I know we spent a lot of money, and I think we also have to be able to provide people that Saturday, Sunday pathway to get there. And I think this moment I push our current crossing at Wellington, I think it's critical because how do people get there, right? And the opportunity to kind of say, hey, we're investing. We're trying to, at least let's pick a road there. Let's see where we can so people can cycle. If we're going to do an MUP or a bike lane or see if there's opportunity, are the roads wide enough? Maybe we pick one road and we do it on Boulevard to kind of really, because I really think those are going to be the magnets right now of our core. And, if I had to tell, I know you highlighted some key points, but I'm always thinking, okay, start somewhere and then build on it, right? And I think, getting that connection at Go and then tying it to Town Park and Library Square are really critical, I think. And that would be I haven't read your report, so I don't know if you highlighted it, but I will note that as one of my comments, and I note it here because when I look and I think, okay, where's our really, I love Town Park. I feel like I'm in, a town when I go there. It's not like a typical regional, a town. It's a town park, right? And it's cute. And I just think it should, we did the work on the Armory, and I think that was great there, as an addition. So I just think we should invest there. But I think the crossing on Wellington, wherever it stops, where we did the MUP starts, I think it stops at Industrial. No, where does it stop? I think it stops wherever it stops so that we could at St. John's sneak something in. I know we may not have boulevard space, but let's do something. So when Metrolinx shows up, we're going to go surprise. Oh, so that's my comment that I think we needed. I think it should be set a priority. That's all.
Not to lengthen the discussion, but I think, Dave, you were saying that they've already stepped up. They've already looked at.
They've looked at it.
Oh,
Decisions been made, not
Yeah.
that I'm aware of, and Gino's right.
Yeah.
It's always important to continue the advocacy, the push, and make sure that, how important it is for the town. So I don't disagree with it being a priority. I think we've identified it as a priority. The timing of the improvements and when it happens, I think staff would say you don't know yet, correct? So, but we put it in the first 10 years, and we put it in as that kind of facility type. And we've already seen a cross-section in draft that was developed many moons ago that shows it. So I think everyone's on the same page about how important that is, that crossing. Right? So should we highlight it as one of those other priorities in the plan? We could, but it's not within your control in terms of timing. Everything else that we have in terms of things that you can act on are in your control, which is why we didn't put it in there, because we don't know enough details. However, design feasibility study, we had suggested, should you choose to do that, will accelerate that process, because then you'll be actively engaging Metrolinx, because they'll be party to it, especially if you decide to do that study as a Class EA, then they'll be drawn in.
Any other comments, Steve?
Just for basic information of the group and just following up what you said, the criticalness of the Go station and where it's located. I think I mentioned this at our very first meeting, is that I think we're really, really lucky in Aurora. And I don't think the people of Aurora understand the massive asset. And it's not an asset, a physical asset. It's an asset because it is a physical asset, but it's the bigger part of that asset is where the GO train station is located, which is right at the center, the heart of Aurora. That's pretty rare for a GO train station. I'm not familiar with the entire GO line. Newmarket is somewhat similar. But I wanted to, Dave, I know you're familiar with the guy that runs the Not Just Bikes video series. I would suggest that you have a look at, he a few videos ago, he did they built a train station in, I think you know the one I'm talking about, Dave. It's about relative to Amsterdam where Aurora is relative to Toronto. And they built the perfect train station. And it's all implemented with the trains and the crossovers and the cycling infrastructure. I mean, we'll never get that here, but it's like heaven for a train station. And if we could ever do that at Aurora Go, it would be amazing.
Push your button.
Yeah, another subject. Looking ahead a little bit, we know there will be a fair amount of high-rise type of development along the station area, like mostly south of Wellington, I think, where the industrial buildings are now, the brown lands. So
Mid-rise. Let's call them mid-rise.
mid-rise, okay, mid-rise then. But there will be a lot of people around that area. And we also have a downtown area where we will probably also develop quite a bit in the Yonge Street corridor and the promenade. Now, we also have a need to have foot traffic in downtown Aurora. So when I mentioned that we have had the pedestrian traffic taking a little bit of a backseat, one of the things I was thinking of is the connection between the train station area and Yonge Street. We need to pay attention to how we can make it really inviting for people to go from that one area to another. It's for transit purposes, but also very much for us to have the business area come alive again, like to support it. And for that, we need to have foot traffic. We can't afford to have all the cars go down, and we won't have foot traffic when the cars go. They stop first or go on to someplace else. You need to have a really good network of footpaths, basically going between Yonge Street and the railroad station. We had a case of connecting the town park to library complex. And we were looking for a path through there. We were going to cut down some trees and so on. That didn't go very well. With a little bit of foresight, we might have been able to get a path right by the school that was sold at one point, where there's parking now for the residents in the school building. Well, that could have been a corridor that would have connected the two of them, like the two areas I'm mentioning, the library and the town park. But
Can I get just Dave, can you weigh in on the interconnectivity between pedestrian interconnectivity between MTSA and Yonge Street?
Yeah, so that whole area has a network that, it's a key connection in this part of Aurora, right? So the connections in that area, connecting to the library, to town park, to town square, to the main street, incorporating the streetscape plan that's coming and the design, thinking about the whole core. Like if you think about, from industrial, you draw a circle all around with Main Street sort of being in the middle. And then you look at our network, you'll see there's a lot of focus on adding infrastructure in there to improve walkability. So I think you'll see that captured.
Yeah, we also need a little bit of other development there, not just the path.
Yeah.
We need some comfort areas. We can sit down, you can meet people, some green in between and so on. The infrastructure goes with the trail environment and with walking, basically.
Thank you. Steve? Yeah. Just touch your button, please.
Dave, I don't know if this is a question for you or others who know more about what is going on with Metrolinx. Do we know what, like, when they're done this phase of the double tracking at Aurora Go, what physically will that look like? Like, will you be able to come in from the east and like get under the tracks or over the tracks, like somehow to get to the other side? Like how? Under. They're building an underpass. Okay.
We don't have all the answers. Staff may know more about it. I think it's still in that design phase. Is that fair, Marco?
Yeah, they haven't committed to building an underpass at Wellington under the tracks. It was in
No,
that.
I'm talking about in like the Wellington is one thing, like building an at grade for the train and the road going under, that's one thing. But I'm just talking about pedestrians like walking. So you get off. I noticed this. I was at Rutherford Road Station a couple weeks ago. Yes. Well, that's Wellington. Okay. Great. Okay. So I was at Rutherford, but I'm talking about at Rutherford Station, there's a big thing to go up and over the tracks. Okay. Will we have that at Aurora? No.
We don't know yet.
No, we don't know.
We haven't seen any final detailed plans
Okay.
on how they propose that, no.
So wherever people exit the train, if they want to go east or west, physically on foot or by bike, they will have to walk to the platform, the north part. They get off the tree.
If they get off the train. So right now, and if I'm not correct, they did all the stations. There are on both sides of the platform, there are tunnels. So you can walk right across. That's similar to Rutherford, Maple. Here in Aurora, they've done that. So you can basically on the platforms, there are tunnels that they've already built that you can cross the tracks. In terms of them, when they walk out of the station and want to go north, if there is going to be a future bridge, okay, what I'm assuming is that you're thinking about the pedestrian bridge on Rutherford that can take you from the north side, from the south side to the north side and vice versa. That I don't think has been proposed for Aurora. All right, because Rutherford is a bigger, wider road, and it was put in there as part of that vision because to get underneath, it was so much further away. So it's like, okay,
Let's just try to focus on
So-
a master plan. They're tangent discussions, but valid, but
On the metro. I mean, if you want to send me your questions, I can.
there you go. Any other questions for either Dave or staff or generally?
Maybe if I might just
Yep.
provide one response back to Gino.
Yep.
So on page 25 of the handout, in the bottom of the legend, you'll see under proposed, it says on-road cycling facility or MEP. And it shows a line type because that section of Wellington is a regional road. And the region, as part of this master plan, did not want us to specify any proposed facility type. In this particular case, we ignored them. And we put in a facility type along that section of Wellington. It's not on the map that shows multi-use trails and multi-use paths. It's on the proposed cycling network. And it says at the bottom, on-road cycling facility or MVP. And the reason why we put it on this map is, staff can work with the region at the time that it happens, but the region isn't in the habit of providing multi-use pathways because they view them as more of a pedestrian facility, and therefore, like a sidewalk, it's solely the responsibility, in most cases, of the local municipality, though they might cost share, they might do the design, but it's not a guarantee. So that's why we strategically put it this way on this particular map. And I look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Any other comments specific to the master plan?
Okay, a question, since I haven't seen your document in full, have you provided for all of the potential crossings of the rail line that we have in the Trails Master Plan? Have they all been incorporated in this plan?
Every single one but one.
Which one?
We removed the one that's directly to the west of the rail crossing south of Henderson, because there's planned to be a dedicated facility that comes out to that signal. There'll be a multi-use pathway on Young that continues down. So you have a crossing within close distance to make that turn. Plus Metrolinx told us no way, no how. And we wanted to keep the other one that you wanted further down. So, so that's the only one we removed. That one. And
It
yeah.
had a purpose, eh?
Yeah, but we have a design solution that is separated from motor vehicle traffic that I think was in close distance of where that otherwise would be. And it achieves, the spirit of that connection. You'll see when you look at the plan.
What about the one south of Jack Woods?
Every other one that was in the trails plan is on the AT plan.
The one that leads over to the community gardens?
I'm not sure if I have it in front of me, but I know that we only took one off. We went through, we reviewed it with staff. We reviewed it with Gary and the Trails group, and every other one was put on except for that one that I just mentioned.
Any
Maybe
other?
Could I review with staff eventually to have a look at this, please?
Oh, absolutely. So it was just the one that we did take off because
I have to have a look at
yeah,
that.
the most southern
thing
one
here.
on the west side. But
Of
just
Yonge
north of
Street.
Bloomington off of Yonge Street.
Yeah,
But Metrolinx already said unequivocally no to that one.
they say no to a lot of things, so I'm not worried about that. So, yeah,
I'd have to follow up with Gary because he was the one that's been talking about that with them. Because he oversees the building of the trails of the off-road trails.
It also had to do the proximity of another separated crossing that was less than 100 meters or 200 meters from that location. Yeah, and that's why they wouldn't entertain it. And
Okay.
you have to give
Sorry.
up a little bit to get more, right? So I think it's a good strategy. Thank you very much.
Can I just, one question on the on the labeling, desired lines.
Right.
So those are all of the ones that are identified but are on private
Yes.
property.
And they were in the Trails Master Plan that was, I don't know if it was adopted by council at the time. I think it was. The previous Trails Master Plan, or they received for information. So very similar line work that was in that plan as well.
So all of the ones that were in the previous one
Yes.
are on this one.
I think there may be one piece that's been removed because development has since occurred where the hotels and that area is.
Mhm.
But other than that, yes, everything else.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. We have a motion on the floor. We have a mover and a seconder, correct? Yep. So all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have no information items. Brief new business. Why don't we start at that end? If you have any new business. Yep.
In cooperation with Geo, we are it's an inquiry, not so much new business. It's back to the GO train station, our favorite favorite place. Some of the GO train stations, they rolled this out, I can't remember when, a couple of years ago, advanced bike parking. I mean, we have bike parking at Aurora Go, but this is more like a secure lockup, like on the platform. Some of the GO train stations, they test drove this at some of them over the last couple of years. I'm just wondering if we were to want that at Aurora Go, what's the process to sort of make it happen?
Yeah. Sorry, can I just get the microphone on? So just push a button. Oh, you push a button. There we go.
Good. We're gonna follow. Pardon me? Yeah, you know what? It's blocking anyways. User error all on me. But we're gonna follow up with our colleagues at Metrolinx to see what the process is to look into that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Steve and I,
So just push a button again.
thanks. Steve and I had conversed online about this, and I've done my own tour of some of the GO train stations to take some photos. And a good example locally would be East Gwillimbury, which I doubt they get the traffic, the pedestrian traffic, bike traffic that we would probably get, but they have, I would say, an overabundance of locked bike parking and I don't know the proper terminology, outdoor bike parking as well, so. Like a domed outdoor, right, right. But they also have this separate structure with, I think you rent by
Yeah.
the month and has a keypad, so something like that is what. we would convert to
Go,
the-
if you go to the Metrolinx page about it, I think it's a nominal fee. It's $50 for the year. Like it's nothing. And I think you get access through some type of a code, and it's an indoor secure parking as opposed to just like locking the bike to a bike stand.
So staff will look at it and report back to this committee. Okay, thank you. Any other?
Thank you to staff.
Klaus, any new business?
Well, I asked about it before. It was, can we get yield signs in town on the map that we can discuss it to find out what we could possibly do about the absence of them, more or less. There's just a few on the roundabouts. But I'm looking at the four-way stops all over town, and a lot of them could be improved. I see it by having yield signs on the side streets, more or less.
So you want to have that discussion
I would
as an
like to have
agenda item?
discussion here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we somehow have some type of maybe I don't know, an analysis, just a basis so we can have a conversation?
Yes, we can do that. I just think I need to better understand what we'll be looking at to analyze. And Michael, do
Should I
you?
explain it again?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Basically, we have stop signs, four-way stops at just about most of the intersections in town. And some of those, they're quite overseeable from the side road. So you can put yield signs there. They don't have to stop when there's no traffic on the collector road, for instance. They have to yield to the traffic and then you keep going. So you prevent stopping and starting again, which is extra emissions. And in terms of our climate emergency, we should be paying attention to things like this. And I would like to see whether we can maybe make progress on this type of, infrastructure in the traffic.
So let us take that one away, Klaus, and we'll come back to the committee once we've. had a look.
Okay.
Thank you. Gina, any new business? No.
No.
Owen? No. Okay. Could I get no more new business? A motion to adjourn? Owen, Steve, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, everyone.